So welcome to all of you Shiksha 360, and today basically we will discuss chapter number 24 part 2 clear, chapter number 24 part 2 clear. And in this session basically we have to discuss 3 to 4 questions, and basically these types of questions basically you will expect in your examination clear. Easy topic, but you have to cover one by one all the points from this chapter clear. So let's start our second part, 3 pillars of Basel II clear. So let's discuss basically what are the 3 pillars of the Basel II, as basically we have already discussed regarding the 3 pillars clear. Basically these are the 3 pillars: minimum capital requirement, supervisory review process, and market discipline clear. And market discipline clear. So let's start detailed discussion of that one by one. So the fundamental objective clear, the fundamental objective of the committee, that is basically Basel committee. The fundamental objective of the committee, that is the Basel committee, basically was to revise the 1988 accord clear. 1988 accord, generally we can say that 1988 guidelines, and strengthen the soundness clear, and strengthen the soundness and stability of the banking system clear, and strengthen the soundness and stability of the banking system clear. The main motive clear, the main motive of the Basel norm is to basically strengthen the banking system clear, is to strengthen the banking system clear. So the revised framework clear, the revised framework basically would promote clear, the revised framework basically would promote the adoption of stronger risk management practices by the banks clear. The revised framework here, the revised framework basically would promote the adoption of clear, basically would promote the adoption of stronger risk management practices clear, basically would promote the adoption of stronger risk management practices by the banks clear, by the banks. So the revised framework also clear, the revised framework provides greater use of assessment of risk clear. The revised framework basically also provides greater use of assessment of risk provided by the bank's internal system as input to capital calculation clear, as input to capital calculation clear. And under the Basel II clear, basically it demands capital allocation basically for the operational risk for the first time clear, capital allocation for the operational risk for the first time clear. Basically it demands capital allocation for the operational risk for the first time clear. Basically what is the meaning of that? Basically capital allocation, like basically we can say that you are charging basically 8% or 9% from the customer clear. So basically some part it belongs, like basically some part is belong from the credit risk, some part is belong from the market risk, and some part belong from the operational risk clear. So it is the meaning of that clear. So basically it demands clear, basically it demands capital allocation clear, basically it demands capital allocation basically for the first time clear, basically for which risk? Basically for the operational risk clear. So basically it provides a range of options clear, basically it provides a range of options basically for determining capital requirements clear. It provides a range of options basically for determining capital requirements for the credit risk and operational risk clear. Basically it provides a range of options for determining the capital requirement for the credit risk and operational risk. It also emphasizes the need for consistency in approach clear, and basically we have to consistent in that. Basically if we have to maintain any ratio, so basically we have to constantly maintain that ratio clear. Let's discuss it here. So the Basel II Accord clear, the Basel II Accord is basically expected to establish a minimum level of capital for the internationally active banks clear. So basically internationally active banks, basically they have to keep a minimum capital clear. So the national regulators are set to free higher standards for the minimum capital clear. The national, like basically as per the Basel clear, basically we have to maintain 8% clear, 8% capital adequacy ratio clear, CR. And but in India basically it is to be maintained up to 9% clear, basically it is maintained up to 9% clear. So the Basel II Accord clear is expected, the Basel II Accord basically is expected to establish a minimum level of capital for international active banks clear. The national regulators basically are free to set higher standards clear, national regulators basically are set to free higher standards for the minimum capital clear. Basically they have to maintain at least as per specified by the Basel, but they have to provide basically little bit higher capital clear, little bit higher capital clear as per the standard given by the Basel clear. So the revised framework is perceived as more forward looking approach and has a capacity to evolve with the time clear, and has a capacity to evolve with the time. So the new capital accord will require banks clear, the new capital accord basically will require banks to manage risks by not only allocating regulatory capital clear, but also by disclosing greater risk information and setting standards for the risk management processes. Clear? So the new capital accord, clear? The new capital accord, basically we can say that the guidelines will require banks to manage risk, clear? Basically by not allocating, clear? So basically here what they are doing, basically they are allocating capital, clear? If they will face this risk, so basically they have required capital for that segment, clear? So the new capital accord basically will require banks to manage risks, clear? To will require banks to manage risks by not only allocating regulatory capital, clear? By not only allocating regulatory capital, but also by disclosing, clear? But also by disclosing greater risk information, clear? Greater risk information and setting standards for the risk management process, clear? Basel 2 provides incentives, clear? Basically Basel 2 provides incentives or benefits for banks to invest and increase the sophistication of their internal risk management capabilities in order to gain reductions in the capital, clear? In order to gain reductions in the capital, clear? So this will help them to increase the bank's lending, clear? So basically if they have managed their internal risk management properly, clear? So basically they have to allocate less capital in that sector because they have managed their risk very well, clear? So basically they have more money, clear? That basically they will be used for lending, clear? So basically this will help them, clear? This will help them to increase the bank lending, clear? Basically this will help them to increase the bank's lending, which in turn will give higher returns and value to its shareholder, clear? Basically this will help them to increase the bank's lending, clear? Basically this will help them to increase the bank's lending, which in turn, clear? Basically which in turn will give higher returns and value to its shareholder, clear? And value to its shareholder. Like pillar 1, clear? Like under the pillar 1, minimum capital requirement, clear? Like under the pillar 1, what are the minimum capital requirement? So the capital ratio, clear? The capital ratio continues to be calculated using the definition of regulatory capital and risk weighted assets, clear? The capital ratio, clear? Basically how we can calculate the capital ratio? Basically it continues to be calculated using the definition of regulatory capital and risk weighted assets, clear? RWA. Sometimes basically you will find what RW at some places. So basically RWA basically stands for the risk weighted assets, clear? So the definition of eligible regulatory capital, clear? The definition of eligible regulatory capital largely continues to be defined in the earlier accord, clear? The definition of eligible regulatory capital largely continues to be defined in the earlier accord of 1988 and amended to include, clear? And later on basically they will amended to include basically what? And later on basically amended to include tier 3 capital as prescribed in January 96 and September 97, clear? So the definition of eligible regulatory capital, clear? The definition of eligible regulatory capital largely continues to be as defined in the earlier accord of 1988, clear? Initially they have also been defined under that, and basically later on, clear? As basically they are including new capitals and later on basically amended to include tier 3 capital, clear? Include tier 3 capital basically as prescribed in January 96 and September 97, clear? But in India basically we have not any tier 3 capital, clear? As per the RBI guidelines, clear? We have not implemented that guidelines, clear? So does the term capital, clear? Basically what it includes, clear? Does the term capital what it includes? Tier 1 capital. Tier 1 it is also known as the core capital, clear? You have to remember that. Sometimes they will ask basically what is the other name of tier 1. So tier 1 it is also known as core capital. Tier 2. Tier 2 it is basically also known as a supplemental capital, clear? Supplemental capital. And third one is a tier 3 capital, clear? Tier 3 capital, clear? So the term capital basically would include tier 1 capital basically which is also known as the core capital, tier 2 capital which is also known as a supplemental capital, and tier 3 capital, clear? And tier 3 capital. So the total capital ratio, clear? The total capital ratio, clear? Basically which we have discussed here, clear? This one, clear? The total capital ratio basically as per the Basel guidelines, clear? The total capital ratio as per the Basel guidelines basically not less than 8%, clear? Not less than 8%, and but as per the RBI guidelines basically it should not be less than the 9%, clear? It should not be less than the 9%, clear? So let's discuss basically what is the formula of that and what they are saying here, clear? So the total capital ratio, clear? The total capital ratio basically must not be lower than the 8%, clear? So basically as basically we know that basically total capital what it constitutes: tier 1, tier 2 and tier. So let's discuss one by one what is included under that, clear? So basically tier 1 it is also known as core capital, clear? So core capital consists of paid up capital, clear. What it consists of? Core capital consists of the paid up capital, free reserves, unallocated surpluses, and less specified deductions, clear. Less specified deductions, clear. So basically core capital consists of paid up capital, free reserves, and unallocated surpluses, less specified deductions, clear. Less specified deductions. And next one is the supplementary capital, clear. Supplementary capital basically consists of subordinated debt, clear. Supplementary capital basically consists of subordinated debt of more than 5 years maturity, clear. Basically why I am highlighting this in green, because this is one of the previous year question, clear. This is one of the previous year question, clear. Supplementary capital, clear. Supplementary capital consists of subordinated debt, clear. So basically they have asked basically year, clear, of more than 5 years maturity, clear. Basically supplementary capital basically comprises subordinated debt of more than 5 years maturity, loan reserves, clear. Loan loss reserves, revaluation reserves, investment fluctuation reserves, and limited life preference shares, clear. And limited life preference shares, clear. So all these things basically come into the supplementary capital, and I request to all of you, please remember all these things, clear. You have to remember all these things, clear. There is not any shortcut, clear. There is not any shortcut to go through all these points. You have to go through all these points one by one, and at least you have to watch the video 2 to 3 times so that you are able to understand all the points, clear. So basically supplementary capital, clear. Supplementary capital basically comprises subordinated debt, clear. Basically comprises subordinated debt of more than 5 years maturity, clear. Basically of more than 5 years maturity, loan loss reserves, revaluation reserves, investment fluctuation reserves, and limited life preference shares, clear. And limited life preference shares, clear. Further, tier 2 capital, clear. It is a restricted of tier 2 capital. It is not more than the tier 1 capital, clear. You have to remember that, clear. Tier 2 capital is restricted to 100% of tier 1 capital. We can say that if the tier 1 capital is 100 crore, so the tier 2 capital, clear, the tier 2 capital is to be maximum 100 crore or less than 100 crore, clear. Tier 2 capital, clear. Here basically tier 2 capital is restricted to 100% of tier 1 capital as before, and long-term subordinated debt, clear. And long-term subordinated debt, clear. And long-term subordinated debt basically may not exceed 50% of the tier 1 capital, clear. Long-term subordinated debt basically may not exceed 50%, clear. Not exceed 50% of the tier 1 capital, clear. You have to remember these two things, clear. Tier 2 capital is restricted to 100% of the tier 1 capital, and the long-term, clear. And the long-term subordinated debt, clear. And the long-term subordinated debt here is to be not exceed 50% of the tier 1 capital, clear. May not exceed 50% of the tier 1 capital, clear. Next here is to be tier 3, clear. Tier 3 capital basically, which we have already discussed, that is presently not allowed by the RBI, clear. Basically tier 3 capital, it is presently not allowed by the RBI, clear. Presently not allowed by the RBI, clear. So basically tier 3 basically capital consists of short-term subordinated debt, clear. Tier 3 capital basically consists of short-term subordinated debt for the sole purpose of meeting a proportion of the capital requirement for the market risk, clear. So basically tier 3 capital basically consists of short-term subordinated debt, clear. Basically consists of short-term subordinated debt, that is basically for the sole purpose of meeting a proportion to the capital requirement of the market risk, clear. Basically for the market risk, clear. And short-term bonds, next one is short-term bonds basically have a original maturity of at least 2 years. This is also one of the question basically they have asked in the examination, clear. Short-term bond, clear. Basically short-term bond must have a original maturity of at least 2 years. Very, very important for the examination point of view. These two lines, clear. These 2 to 3 lines, clear. You have to remember all these points basically I have mentioned here one by one, clear. Short-term bonds basically must have original maturity of at least 2 years, and here basically supplementary capital basically consists of subordinated debt of more than 5 years maturity, clear. Of more than 5 years maturity. So basically tier 3 capital, clear. Let's discuss regarding the tier 3 capital. Tier 3 capital basically will be restricted to 250% of a bank's tier 1 capital, clear. tier 3 capital, clear, tier 3 capital basically will be limited to, like tier 2 capital basically will be limited to 100%, clear. Similarly, tier 3 capital, clear, basically will be limited to 250% of a bank's tier 1 capital, clear. That is required to support the market risk, clear, basically that is required to support the market risk, clear, that is required to support the market risk, clear. So basically this it means, what this means that, so basically this means that, clear, basically what this means that, basically this means that a minimum of about 28.5% of market risk, clear, needs to be supported by the tier 1 capital, clear. So this means that basically a minimum of, clear, this means that a minimum of about 28.5% of the market risk, clear, basically needs to be supported by the tier 1 capital, clear. So basically tier 1 capital, so basically minimum 28.5%, clear. So minimum 28.5%, clear. This means that a minimum of about 28.5% of the market risk, clear, needs to be supported by the tier 1 capital, clear. And here tier 3 capital basically will be limited to the 250% of the bank's tier 1 capital, basically that is required to support the market risk, clear, that is basically required to support the market risk, clear. So here they are also mentioning that basically tier 3 capital, it is a capital requirement basically for the market risk, clear. Tier 3 capital, clear, tier 3 capital basically was provided under the Basel II guidelines, clear, basically tier 3 capital basically was provided under the Basel II guidelines, but RBI has not permitted this capital for the banks in India, clear, basically tier 3 capital was provided under the Basel II guidelines, clear, but this criteria or this guidelines has not been implemented by the RBI for banks in India, clear, or has not given the permission, clear. So any capital requirement basically arising in a respect of credit and counterparty risk, clear, basically any capital requirement, clear, arises either in the case respect of credit or counterparty risk, clear, and counterparty risk, clear, basically needs to be met by the tier 1 and tier 2 capital, clear, because we have not any tier 3 capital, clear. So any capital risk, clear, basically arising in respect of the credit and counterparty risk basically needs to be met by the tier 1 or the tier 2 capital, clear, tier 1 or tier 2 capital, clear. So next one here, basically the scope of the risk weighted assets, clear, the scope of the risk weighted assets is expanded to include the certain additional aspects, clear, to include the certain additional aspects of market risk and also of operational risk, clear, basically to include the additional aspects of the market risk and operational risk, clear. So the total risk weighted assets, clear, the total risk weighted assets, clear, like this is the formula of the capital adequacy ratio, clear, this is the formula of the capital adequacy ratio, regulatory capital upon total risk weighted assets, clear, capital adequacy ratio, CAR, capital adequacy ratio, basically regulatory capital upon total risk weighted assets, clear, capital adequacy ratio, basically regulatory capital upon total risk weighted assets, clear. So basically how we can calculate total risk weighted assets, clear. So total risk weighted assets, clear, include the capital requirement for the market risk and operational risk, basically it is to be multiplied by 12.5 along with the risk weighted assets for the credit risk, clear, along with the risk weighted assets of the credit risk, clear. So basically the total risk weighted assets, clear, basically include the capital requirement, clear, basically for the market risk and for the operational risk, clear, for the market risk and for the operational, it is to be multiplied by 12.5, clear, it is to be multiplied by 12.5 along with the risk weighted assets for the credit risk, clear. Here basically they have given the risk weighted assets directly for the credit risk in the formula, and for the market risk and for the operational risk basically they have given the capital requirement, clear, they have given the capital requirement, that's why basically we are multiplying it by 12.5, clear, by 12.5, clear. So basically one question here arises, basically we will, from where basically we will get 12.5, clear. So basically as per the international level, clear, or as per the Basel guidelines, clear, so basically as per the Basel guidelines basically we have to maintain 8%, clear, basically we have to maintain 8% capital ratio, clear. So basically for 12.5 basically we will get here 1.8, clear, basically when we will do 1.8, clear, 1 divided by 8, it comes out to basically 12.5%, clear, 1.8, clear, it is to be 8%, so basically 1 by 8, it comes out to be 12.5%, clear. So the total risk weighted assets, total risk weighted asset is equal to risk weighted assets for the credit risk they have given directly risk-weighted assets for the credit risk and for the market and operational risk. Clear? Basically for the market and operational risk, basically they have given a capital requirement. So basically we have to multiply it by 12.5. Clear? So basically we have to multiply it by 12.5. Clear? We have to multiply it by 12.5. Clear? So this is the formula of the risk weighted assets. Clear? This is the formula of the risk weighted assets. Clear? Now if basically if we have to calculate the formula of the total risk weighted assets, clear, total risk weighted assets in the India. So in India, basically we have to maintain the capital ratio 9%. So what is the multiplying factor here? So please tell fast, what is the multiplying factor here? In the place of 12.5%, now the multiplying factor is to be changed because we have to maintain in India that is to be 9%. Clear? 9%. Clear? So the capital ratio continues to be calculated. Clear? The capital ratio basically continues to be calculated using the regulatory capital and risk weighted assets. Clear? Using the regulatory capital and risk weighted assets basically for the credit, market and operational risk. Clear? Basically for the credit, market and operational risk. Clear? So regulatory capital here basically consists of capital adequacy, regulatory capital. Clear? This one is the consists of tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3 capital. Clear? So what is the capital adequacy ratio? See here, it is to the regulatory capital upon total risk weighted assets. Clear? Upon total risk weighted assets. Very, very important basically for the India. Clear? Basically you will get question in the examination. This is as per the Basel guidelines. Clear? This is as per the Basel guidelines. Clear? Sometimes they will ask basically what is the total risk weighted assets basically as per the RBI guidelines. Clear? As per the RBI guidelines. Clear? Because in India basically you have to maintain at least 9%. Clear? You have to maintain at least 9%. So basically according to that, clear, here the total risk weighted assets is equal to the risk weighted assets for the credit risk. Clear? Risk weighted assets for the credit risk and 1 by 9. Clear? Basically 1 by 9 it comes out to basically 11.11%. Clear? Plus 11.11 into capital requirement for the market risk plus 11.11% into the capital requirement for the operational risk. Clear? So basically they have, where they have given risk weighted assets, you have to directly write it. Clear? Basically you have to directly write it. Clear? And basically where they have not given the risk weighted, or basically they have asked capital requirement, so basically we have to multiply it by this factor. Clear? So basically we have to multiply it by this factor. Clear? So for India the multiplying factor is to be 11.11. And for general, basically for as per the Basel guidelines, it is to be 12.5. Clear? It is to be 12.5. Clear? So I think all of you are aware that basically in India, basically we have to maintain 9%. So basically for when we do 1 by 9, it comes out to be 11.11. And basically as per the Basel guidelines, basically we have to maintain 8%. So basically when I do 1 by 8, it comes out to be 12.5%. Clear? It comes out to be 12.5%. Clear? So what is the meaning of that? Like basically for the Basel says that basically you have to keep reserve rupees 200 crore. Clear? Basically 200 crore, but as per RBI. Clear? So basically they say that basically we will save rupees 220 crore. Clear? Basically we will save rupees 220 crore. So that is basically above the minimum limit. Clear? Above the minimum limit. Clear? So basically if at any time, clear, basically we will face an issue, so basically we will use that excess limit. Clear? Basically we will use that excess limit. Clear? But we will not go down as per the Basel guidelines. Clear? Basically we will no go down basically like we can say that up to 180 crore. Clear? So basically we have to maintain at least this much. Clear? Basically we have to maintain at least this much capital. Clear? Just this is a example. Clear? Just this is for understanding. Clear? Just this is for understanding basically what they are saying here. Clear? Basically what they are saying here. Clear? But here basically we will discuss with respect to the ratio. Clear? Basically with respect to the ratio. Clear? At least this much ratio basically we have to maintain. So basically one question for all of you, please try to solve the question. A bank has a trigger ratio. Clear? Basically a bank has a trigger ratio of 8%. Clear? A bank has a trigger ratio of 8% on its risk weighted assets. Clear? Or weighted risk assets. Clear? We can say that on its risk weighted assets. Clear? RWA has a trigger ratio of 8%. If the bank wants to support rupees 150 million of weighted risk assets. Clear? So basically weighted risk assets basically of how much amount is rupees 150 million. So what is the minimum level of capital must it have? Clear? What is the minimum level of capital must it have? Clear? So a bank has a trigger ratio of 8%. So basically here till now basically what we have discussed, only one formula, this one. Clear? Capital adequacy ratio. Clear? So capital adequacy ratio, it is equal to, please tell fast what is the answer of this question. So capital adequacy ratio, it is equal to regulatory capital upon total risk weighted assets. Clear? Total risk weighted assets. Clear? This is the formula. Clear? Regulatory capital upon total risk weighted assets. Clear? So basically here they give given trigger ratio. Clear? Trigger ratio of 8%. That is basically we have write it here. Regulatory capital. Clear? What is the minimum level of capital must it have? Clear? So basically we have to find it, this one. So total risk weighted assets, basically how much they have given? 150 million. So regulatory capital here comes out to be 150 into 8 upon 100. Cancel out 3, 2, 1, 4. So it comes out to be basically 12 million. Clear? So it comes out to be 12 million. Clear? So this is our answer. Clear? So basically in this way, basically we have to solve these types of questions. Clear? Sometimes basically they will ask this question. Here you are able to answer because we have already know basically what is the concept here behind that. Clear? So that's why I'm saying that please go through all the points properly and try to remember. Clear? Basically, and try to remember so that you are able to answer the question in the examination. Clear? These types of questions basically you will find in your examination. These are basically just based on the formula. Clear? Just based on the formula, but you have to remember in the examination basically which formula basically we have to implement here. Clear? Basically which formula basically we have to implement here. Clear? Now move to the next question. Lower tier 2 subordinated debt by Indian banks can be issued with the minimum maturity period of. Clear? Lower tier 2 subordinated debt by the Indian banks can be issued with the minimum maturity period of lower tier 2 subordinated debt. So move towards the theory. So lower tier 2 subordinated debt. This is not lower. Clear? This is basically subordinated debt. Lower tier 2. Lower basically means that short term. Clear? Lower basically means that short term. Maturity of at least 2 years. Clear? Maturity of at least 2 years. Clear? Clear? That is this one. Subordinated debt. Clear? Subordinated debt. So next one here is to what is the minimum tier 1 capital? Clear? What is the minimum tier 1 capital that is required? Clear? Basically, what is the minimum tier 1 capital that is required to support market risk? Clear? Basically, what is the minimum tier capital? Basically, that is support to market risk if the tier 3 is taken into account. Clear? If the tier 3 is taken into account. First of all, basically we have already discussed that is tier 3 capital. Clear? Tier 3 capital, it is maximum up to basically 250% of the tier 1 capital. Clear? 250% of the tier 1 capital. Clear? And if it is considered, clear, so what is the minimum tier 1 capital that is required to support the market risk? Clear? To support the market risk. So let's go with the slides. So basically here basically we have discussed, this means that a minimum of about 28.5%. Clear? Of market risk need to be supported by the tier 1 capital. Clear? Need to be supported by the tier 1 capital. So this one is the answer here. 28.5%. Clear? 28.5%. This is our answer. Clear? So basically in this way, basically these types of question basically they will ask in the examination. Clear? These types of question basically they will ask in the examination. Clear? So second, pillar 2. Clear? Basically what the pillar 2 say that? Clear? Basically chapter number 25. Clear? Chapter number 25 basically totally based on pillar number 2. Clear? Basically pillar number 2, basically what it say that evaluate risk management. Clear? Basically we have to evaluate the risk management. Second, ensure soundness. Clear? Ensure soundness and integrity of bank's internal processes to assess the adequacy of capital. Clear? Ensure soundness and integrity. Clear? And integrity of bank's internal processes. Clear? And integrity of bank's internal processes to assess the adequacy of capital. Third one is ensure maintenance of minimum capital with the PCA for shortfall. Clear? Basically with the PCA for shortfall. And next one basically prescribes differential capital wherever necessary. Clear? Basically, where the internal process are slack. Clear? Just here you have to go through these points. Basically, we have to discuss all these points one by one in detail in the next session. Clear? Basically, when we have to discuss chapter number 25. Clear? And next, basically, market discipline. Clear? That is basically pillar number 3. Clear? Pillar number 3. What is say that basically enhance disclosures. Clear? Basically, we have to enhance our disclosures, core disclosures and supplementary disclosures. Clear? Basically enhanced disclosure, then basically say that second one basically core disclosures and the supplementary disclosures. Third one basically disclosure should be made on half yearly basis. Clear? Very, very important point. Sometimes they will ask basically when will be the disclosure will be made. So disclosure basically should be made on half yearly basis. Clear? On half yearly basis. Okay. So this one is the Basel 2. Clear? This one is the Basel 2 diagram. And this one is the Basel 3. Clear? Sometimes basically they will ask in the examination, what is the basic difference between the Basel 2 and Basel 3? Clear? Basically, what is the basic difference between the Basel 2 and Basel 3? Clear? So basically, this one is the Basel 2, and they will move towards the Basel 3. Clear? So basically, let's say that under the Basel 1, clear? Basically, we have Basel 2, sorry, minimum capital requirement. Under the pillar 2, basically we have supervisory review process, and under the pillar 3, clear? Basically we have disclosure and market discipline. Clear? Disclosure and market discipline. Clear? So basically what are the changes basically will come under the Basel 3? Clear? I request all of you, please remember this point. Clear? Please remember this slide, because you are able to understand clear what are the basic difference between the Basel 2 and Basel 3. Clear? So Basel 3, what it say that pillar 1, here minimum capital requirement, basically here they have enhanced minimum capital and liquidity requirements. Clear? Enhanced minimum capital and liquidity requirements. Clear? The problem which they have faced in the previous guidelines. Clear? So basically they have to little bit update. Clear? They have to little bit update that guidelines. Clear? So here basically under the Basel 2 to Basel 3, first basically they will change the pillar 1. Clear? Under the pillar 1, earlier basically we have minimum capital requirement. Now basically we have enhanced minimum capital and liquidity requirements. Clear? Enhanced minimum capital and liquidity requirements. Clear? Under the pillar 2, earlier we have basically supervisory review process. Clear? Now basically we have enhanced supervisory review process, basically for firm-wide risk management and capital planning. Clear? Basically enhanced supervisory review process, basically for firm-wide risk management and capital planning. Clear? And capital planning. Clear? And pillar number 3, clear? Disclosure and market discipline, and here basically enhanced risk disclosure and market discipline. Clear? So basically there is a little bit enhancement in all these things. Clear? Enhanced disclosure, risk disclosure and market discipline. Clear? And market discipline. Clear? So basically these are the basic little bit enhancement of all the factors under the Basel 3, and they will include some other factors as per the requirement. Clear? So basically this is the basic difference between the Basel 2 and Basel 3. Clear? Here I request to all of you, please remember these formulas. Clear? Like this formula is very, very important. This is also important. Clear? Basically for the India also, and basically for as per the Basel guidelines also. Clear? What is the formula of the total risk weighted assets? Clear? What is the formula of the total risk weighted assets? Clear? Because you will get question on the basis of that, and the rest all are basic things. Clear? And the rest all are basic things. Clear? So thanks to all of you for watching this session, and very, very important, once again I will say that basically this one, clear? Basically which approach basically we have to use in India basically for different risks. Clear? Basically like for the credit risk, basically we have to use the standardized approach. Why I'm repeating again and again? Because you will definitely get 1 mark question from that. Clear? You will get definitely 1 mark question from that. Like for the standardized approach, basically we have to use basically for the credit risk, basically we have to use the standardized approach. For the operational risk, basically we have to use the basic indicator approach. And for the capital, basically for the market risk, basically we have to use the standardized duration approach. Clear? Standardized duration approach. Clear? So I request to all of you, please go through the video at least 2 times so that you are able to understand all the points. Clear? You are able to understand all the points. Clear? So thanks to all of you for watching this video.